Good morning. I'm going to continue with my series on the 1963-64 United States Championships, in which Bobby Fischer won all 11 games. We're now in game 8, I believe it's game 8, and he's playing white against Raymond Weinstein. 28th of December 63. So Fischer plays e4 as always, and Weinstein plays e5. Fischer comes out with the knight and attacks the pawn, and Weinstein defends the pawn with his knight. Fischer plays bishop to b5 to attack the knight, to threaten the pawn, the so-called Spanish or Royal Lopez opening. A6, the Morphy defence. Fischer was an admirer of Morphy, and who isn't? So he backs up to a4, the so-called Columbus variation, and the knight comes to f6 to threaten the e-pawn. It is defended by the rook on e1. Here you say the rook isn't on e1, but if he takes the knight, takes the pawn with the knight, the rook is on e1 instantly, defending that square. And even if he defends the knight, it can get chased away with the pawn, and then the pawn behind is open to be attacked, and it just isn't worth it. But no, he is threatening to take with the knight, and then when the rook comes, defend the knight. So Fischer defends the pawn and puts his rook on a good active square. Pawn comes to b5 to attack the bishop, and the pawn comes to d6. Fischer takes the instant opportunity to play c3 so that he has an escape square for his knight. The light coloured bishop is very important in the Royal Lopez. The so-called Spanish bishop is well worth preserving. And Weinstein castles. Fischer, instead of trying to break this pin, prevents it from happening in the first place. Yes, it does weaken his kingside pawns a little, but is black in a position to exploit that weakness? I don't really think so. Now he plays knight to a5 to attack the bishop, and Fischer preserves the bishop by playing bishop to c2, and Weinstein takes this single opportunity he has to play the pawn to c5. That's the idea behind a5, isn't really to take the knight, because he knows that won't happen. It's to give him the chance to play this pawn by moving the knight. And Fischer strikes back in the centre, and some exchanges are made. Now he threatens to win the pawn on e4. Attacked twice, defended twice, but Fischer plays d5 to block that bishop, and the bishop goes instantly back. It might look like a bit like time wasting since he's moved the bishop twice, but he's achieved his goal of blocking this diagonal and keeping this powerful bishop temporarily shut out of the game. So the knight develops, and this bishop has not much of a future, so he's making room for the bishop so that he can play rook here, bishop here, and rook here, bishop here, and then bishop here. But it is a weakness on his king side, and that is a bit of a slow plan. So the knight is challenged immediately. Could come here, but then if he comes here, that pawn is going to be when he takes with the knight, takes back with the pawn, that pawn is going to be permanently weak. So he retreats to b7 with the knight, and energetically Fischer comes straight away with a4, trying to break down the queen side. And yeah, fine little sequence. He does indeed manage to break down some of the pawns on the queen side, and which of these pawns is weak, which is strong. They're both weak, they're both strong. It depends. If you win the opponent's pawn, this becomes a very strong pass pawn. If you know, and the other way around. So it can become an important point. This, I think, is a really, really fine point from Fischer. He develops the rook before developing the bishop with his rook left. Now he's threatening to come to a3 and take control over the open A file. Brilliant. So Weinstein plays queen to c8 to put pressure on this rook. It might be possible to double up and then overwhelm this rook. Fischer takes control of the A file whilst he can. The queen comes to c7. The knight comes to b3 to give this bishop room to move. He comes to h5, maybe thinking of coming in here. The bishop comes to d3 because otherwise when the rook comes here it will be overwhelmed. And the rook comes to c8, double attack on the f1 bishop, but it's defended by the queen and by the knight. So Fischer calmly moves his queen to a better square. And Weinstein puts his knight back. I'm not sure that was such a clever maneuver. I think he has just lost a pawn by that. Just lost a tempo by that maneuver. And the bishop develops. Fischer is now finished with development. Both players are finished with the development. We're officially in a middle game. Rook improves itself, and the queen comes to a1. Great on this diagonal. Alright, it's blocked at the minute, but you know, there might well be possibilities. But also, complete control over the A file. It can never be contested. The queen's looking for a better square, and Fischer's queen finds a better square. Now he's got two threats on that knight, so the queen has to come to c8. And brilliant. One tactical opportunity. The pawn on e5 can now be taken. And when it's taken back, the bishop and the queen both attack the knight. And Fischer has won an important central pawn, and not just that he's won an important central pawn, he now has a free pawn in the, he now has a pass pawn in the middle. So no, but wait, there's a double attack by Weinstein on Fischer's knight and bishop. What does he do about that? He attacks the knight. You take my bishop, I'll take yours. But he takes the knight. Isn't it the case that no, the bishop's going to be attacked by the queen? Yeah, it is. But at the same time was his bishop, Weinstein's bishop, attacked. So Fischer retreats his bishop to a safer square, and a square where it defends the king. Now he's got two pass pawns. So Weinstein has to take one of them, and the rook comes to e7, threatening the bishop, and also just getting more of an attack on f7. Of course, pass pawn should be pushed, but Fischer's pass pawn is now just two away from being a new queen. The queen comes to b6 to pin the pawn to the queen. And that's all she wrote, because it's now impossible to defend the pawn on c7. And the pawn on c7, once that goes, the king doesn't any longer have any defence. So you can't stop. Bishop takes f7 check. And then he would have to take back with the bishop, and then the queen would take, and then he would get mate on g7 or h7 with his queen. Both would be mate. So yeah, that was that. An extremely energetic performance from Fischer, who found the best squares for his pieces, and took the one tactical opportunity that his opponent presented to him. Yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe and comment to my videos. Thanks. Bye.